Well, good morning, everyone. I'm so glad you could join us for this discussion about a very important topic, namely protecting yourself from scams, hacks, and hoaxes. My name is Peter Johnson, and I'm the founder and principal of PW Johnson Wealth Management, LLC, here in Silicon Valley, California. And today is June 29th, 2023. We have a very special guest expert today who's his area of specialty is privacy and security, and his name is Glenn Mader. He's the creator of a service called Privacy Action Plan, designed to inform and educate consumers about protecting ourselves against fraud and identity theft. Privacy Action Plan breaks down this complex subject into digestible and actionable mini steps that are spread out over time. Hopefully I'll get a chance to talk more about that a little bit later. I'm really appreciative of him taking the time to be with us, especially considering that he's currently in Budapest, Hungary. Glenn, would you like to share a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, sure. My name is Glenn Mader. I am the president and founder of Privacy Action Plan. What we do is we teach people how to be private and secure online. And it's really a passion of mine that it really sprang out of my newsletter that I write. I have a newsletter at glenn.substack.com, and I write about freedom primarily. Just world events and that type of thing. And privacy is part of that. I think privacy is our right, just as freedom is our right. And that was really kind of what got me started down this road. And so anyway, I just wrote a bunch of articles. I did videos and I did webinars for my audience, and they really liked it. And so I turned it into a whole plan to take people through it, because one of the things that I discovered is the main obstacle to getting private is getting overwhelmed. And so what we decided to do is break it down into bite-sized pieces and just give people, okay, now do this, now do this, now do this, now do this. And when you start focusing on the big picture, there's a lot to do. And so when you focus on the big picture, that's when you get overwhelmed, because there is a lot to think about. But if you distill it down and just focus on the fundamentals, that's what we focus on.
Thanks, Glenn. Talk more about that later. And along those lines, you've given me the perfect segue. I want to give you all a little bit of warning here at the outset that I have a squirrel brain that thinks the best approach to any task is to collect as much information as it can, never stops. The more the merrier. So I'm working on my recovery from this troubling condition, but I still have quite a ways to go, which is to say, just be aware that you don't have to understand everything that we talk about today or act on everything that we suggest, okay? This will be up as a recording, but just take a few notes and whatever seems to be maybe your next steps or areas that catch your attention. Every step we take, protects us a little bit more and a little bit more. Never get to perfect, but it can really make a difference because scams hit so many people and cause such damage in people's lives. Also, I want you to know that we're going to be offering a second webinar with Glenn, and I'll send out a link both to that second webinar and also to the recording soon. If you aren't currently on our email list, and I understand there's people from LinkedIn and Twitter and other folks who've passed on the invitation to you, and you'd like to be on that mailing list, just send an email to peter.johnson@pwjohnson.com, and you'll see my name at the end of this. Again, we'll have that recording up. Finally, please hold your questions until the end of the presentation. We'll probably go right up to to noon here in Pacific time zone. And after that, we can have the Q&A so that the video flows more more easily. So with all of that said, let's begin. As I said, today's topic is Guide to Protecting Yourself from Scams, Hacks, and Hoaxes. And what do you do if you fall victim? So if you're multitasking or not looking at your computer right now, I request and recommend that you watch your screen and listen carefully just for the next 60 seconds. I have something rather startling to share with you.
Not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
So this is a dramatic representation of the latest threat that we have to deal with. And so these lessons we're going to talk about today are extra important. It's incredibly easy for people to create these kinds of avatars using a picture. So if one of your relatives, for example, gets on the internet, posts a couple pictures on Facebook, and especially if they post a movie and the sound of their voice is there, it's almost free. In fact, in some cases, free for anybody to take pictures and voices and turn them into an avatar like this, and then just type in whatever they want them to say. So if you can imagine a relative calling you and saying, gosh, I'm in the hospital and I need money, rush right down to the bank. They're not going to admit me if I don't have, down payment, something. Glenn talks about this and has a great example. Maybe he'll share today about when we're rushed, we can't think. And so we're really victims of fraud. So rule number one, don't rush. Take a little pause, a little beat, and make sure that what you're seeing is real one way or another. So we'll talk more about that later. But you can see that this is getting to be a spy versus spy situation. Very interesting. So it is crucial to be aware of the risks of scams, hacks, and hoaxes, as this says. Everybody can fall prey to these challenges and scams. I have a couple of examples I'll share in a moment, but it doesn't matter how smart you are, you can get caught up in it because we have emotions. Sometimes we're in a rush, we're tired, or it's something that we would never suspect. So this webinar hopefully is going to be just a wake-up call. This isn't meant to scare you. You can still breathe. Life always has risks. So let's not make it into more than it needs to be, but just being wise and being aware and alert. The number of reported scams has been going up really quickly. Almost everybody has fallen prey to a scam or almost fallen prey. A lot of money is lost to the scams. And you don't have to be old to fall for them. 60% of fraud victims are between the ages of 20 and 60. I have some more statistics here about online scams, identity theft, phishing attacks, which we'll talk about in a minute, and especially elder fraud. I think we need to support each other in this. So if you have an elder in your life, there are several steps you can take to protect them or children. So that can happen. To give you a brief rundown of some of the scams I've seen. Just last week, a lawyer I work with, who's a former FBI agent, came this close to losing $73,000 to a scam. He actually was in his car on the way to the bank when it dawned on him that maybe this wasn't legit. Secondly, a world famous psychologist, a colleague of mine, got an emergency call from her daughter asking for money. And sure enough, that wasn't really her daughter. A couple I know and work with that have owned an internet technology business, like 30 employees. So they're really, really savvy. They fell for a scam recently, which was a bill from a roofing company that they were working with. It seemed reasonable to get a bill from this company, but the company's computers had been hacked. And almost 30 years ago, we had a physical break-in at our old office where the thieves stole all of our computers and all of our backups. So not only did it put our customers at risk, which was very stressful for me, but it also could have completely ended our business because they stole all the backup data that had cost us tens of thousands of dollars to collect. And plus, we could have had clients leave, but we disclosed it immediately. And fortunately, they were just after the hardware and not the software. But important to back up our data and be aware there's physical threats too. And yet another story, this one really was kind of a social engineering kind of scam, not on the computers. But I was dating a woman whose father was a retired doctor. I think he had $2 million in savings. And he was kind of a lonely guy, and someone else, another man, befriended him, and they spent all kinds of time together. And this so-called friend persuaded him to open up a motorcycle shop, of all things, and eventually made off with the bank account, I guess, and left the poor doctor $1 million poorer. His daughter wasn't too happy about that either, being an imminent heir. So I'm not saying, again, not saying you have to look for a shadow behind every rock, but these can come from different directions, and they usually play on our emotions or the fact that we're not aware of something. So I'm going to invite Glenn to do a little section here as you see fit. Over to you, sir.
Okay. So should I just go through and answer these questions then? Is that what you'd like me to do?
Anything that you feel inspired to do in this very moment.
Okay.
It's your show for a little while.
Okay, so let me talk about a pig butchering scam. So a pig butchering scam is, they call it a pig butchering scam because they want to fatten the pig up before the slaughter. So it's a disgusting term, but what they're doing, what they mean by this is they're willing to invest a lot of time in earning your trust and developing that relationship. And the more they can earn that trust and develop a relationship with you, the more they can get out of you. So this pig butchering scam, there's a lot of different forms for it, but it has evolved a lot and it's actually quite sophisticated now. So it used to be where people would meet other people online, like a dating site, and it'd kind of be a long distance thing. And then they would develop this relationship, and then it'd be something about, I want to come over and see you, I need some money, and then so the person sends them money, and then they need to send more money, but it's this developing a relationship. But I want to tell you what this has evolved into. So I'll give you an example of, I think his name is Steve Belcher, and he's in Denver, and he's a very smart guy. He's actually a VP of a software company, and he's a programmer himself. So he knows, he's a pretty sophisticated guy, right? And he got onto a dating site and met somebody, and they started chatting back and forth. and they started developing this relationship. And at some point, she says to him, "Do you do anything with crypto?" And he says, "No, I mean, I have like 10,000 bucks in crypto, but it's just sat there, doesn't do anything. Um, so I don't really do anything with crypto." And she said, "Well, you might want to try out such and such app." Right. And so this app, so remember, she's not saying give me money. She's just saying try this third-party app out that she uses. And she says, I've made a killing with this. I can't believe how much money I'm making with this. And so this guy, Steve goes out and looks at the app, and it's a very well made app. They spent a lot of money making this app, and he's a software programmer. He's in a software company, so he can see this is a really well designed app. So he put some money into it. He put $5,000 into it. So now he's looking at his screen and he sees $5,000, and then that $5,000 quickly turns into $6,500. And he says, "Wow, this is amazing! Like $1,500 return on $5,000 within like a week or 2 weeks. That's amazing." So then he takes the money out. He takes it and pulls it into his bank account, and he gets it. So he has $6,500 in his bank account. So he says, "This is real." And all the time while he's doing this lady that he's flirting with, and he thinks that he's, developing this relationship with, is reinforcing this belief. And she says, "Yeah, I mean, every time he brings it up, she says, 'Yeah, I'm making so much money. I've traveled around the world and all this stuff.'" And so she's reinforcing this. So he puts in some more money, and then he watches it just go up like crazy. And then he puts $50,000 in, $100,000 in, and that $100,000 goes up to just like crazy amounts. And then he looks at his 401k, and he's got $1.6 million in his 401k. And his 401k is doing nothing. Nothing compared to this, right? So he pulls all of his money out, puts it into this app, and then he's watching the app, and the app is going up. After a few months, it's like $8 million. He's got $8 million. So at some point, he decides to pull some of it. He wants to pull some of his money out. The app shuts down. The lady that he's chatting with on this dating app disappears. Her account closes down, and he realizes, wow, I just lost every single cent that I own. And that is a huge punch in the gut. But this is a really sophisticated scam. These people really know what they're doing. The lady is very good at developing this relationship. He thought he was maybe in love with her, and she never asked for money. So the only red flag really was, this is too good to be true. It's too good to be true. If you get something like that and you see that kind of returns on your money, there's no way that's real. So anyway, that's one example of a pig butchering scam that a lot of people are falling for. There was so I'm in Budapest now, but I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska. There was a family in Lincoln that fell for the exact same scam. And the only thing that was different is one of the family members got involved, and then they told everyone else in the family, and everyone else in the family saw how much money they were making. And so the rest of the people in the family jumped in too, and they all lost everything that they had. And it's a pretty heartbreaking thing when you realize that you've lost everything, right? So that's one of the scams that is very common. And I don't know if you want to ask a question about that, Peter, or
I'm just sort of sitting here in shock. I think people do need to be aware of it's too good to be true. And one of the things that I'll suggest at the end is have somebody to talk to before you do these things, preferably a financial planner. Because the kind of thing we're talking about here is not making that extra 1% or beating the market or picking stocks or any of that. We're talking about protecting ourselves against the big mistakes. And we're way ahead of the game if we can do that. So I think having a trusted family member or an advisor to just get a second opinion. As an advisor, I'd say, even if it's a true offer and it's kicking, doing really well, don't put all your money in it. Always diversify. But I'd be looking for registration with the SEC and things like that. There's certain documents and about financial offerings that need to be filed, and you probably wouldn't have seen that for that one. I don't know, but anyway,
Yeah,
carry
and
on, sir.
people like the whole idea of crypto. They think, they saw a lot of people get rich with it, but those people that got rich with Bitcoin, they really were lucky. They got in at the right time, and they got lucky. They bought Bitcoin at $1 each or 10 cents each, and it went up to what, $60,000 each. They got lucky. Crypto is not easy to make money in, and anything that poses as a quick way to make money, especially in crypto, is really that's a huge red flag. Okay, so the next one is the SIM swapping scam, and so this is a totally different type of thing, and it's something that is actually something that you can't protect yourself against. This is something that happens at the level of your carrier. And so what happens is, I wish I could, actually, can I share my screen? I'll show a video on this real quick. Okay, now this is a guy who is at a hacking convention, and this is somebody, they're going to show you how this is called social engineering. And so this is let me just play this, and then you can get this.
Holy crap. I invited Chris to hack me with his team, but they're gonna hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
We help people with human security issues by testing vulnerabilities for like a network test, but it's for the people network. We test those vulnerabilities, see where the holes are, and then help people learn so they can patch them.
Can we try some of this? Can we try some,
yeah,
see if it works?
Yeah, we probably could have our star visher here make some phone calls as
Let's do it.
Sure. Do you want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it. Who are you gonna call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider
Okay.
and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna spoof from your number, so it's gonna look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. My husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby, and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry, I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for uses information, and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying, and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
gmail.com?
Jessica gets my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Shh. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account. Okay, my
Jessica uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry, so there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my
Thank you
password.
so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right, thank you.
Holy shit. So they just gave you access to my entire cell phone account.
You're gonna have to go on and change your password now because it's Jess, my name.
And all it took was a crying baby and a phone call.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll let you share now what you were sharing again, Peter. Basically, what a SIM swapping attack is somebody that does this, where they call into the provider and they get the provider to switch over your phone number to their phone. And once they get access to your phone, they can wreak havoc. Once they get control of your phone number, they can wreak havoc. And there are many people that have lost millions of dollars with this. And really, there's no way to protect against this other than one thing, and that is a new service called Afani. And this is what I use. I'm not associated with them at all, but it's EFANI.com. And what they do is they are a reseller of AT&T and Verizon. But when you become a customer of them, so you can become a customer of Afani and say, okay, I want to be on Verizon network. So you have the Verizon network, but you're not a Verizon customer. You're an Afani customer, and you have to jump through hoops. If anyone calls in and tries to get your number, there are layers and layers and layers of protection there, so that they are not going to switch you over. And most people are pretty surprised at how, big tech companies like Verizon, AT&T, all they want is the sale. They don't care about your security or anything like that. So they couldn't do this even if they wanted to, because there's so many layers of personnel and systems and all that stuff. But you saw in that video how easy and how skilled those scammers are at tricking other people. Right. And that goes back to the first question here of what's the difference between hackers and scammers. So hackers are people that do computer-based attacks, whereas scammers are people that get you on the phone and they're really good. They're really good at getting the money out of you. And so they work together. And this is, if we wanted to jump forward to ransomware, this is what happens with ransomware. So if you get ransomware on your computer, you're going to get an alert that pops up and says, your computer has been infected with ransomware. If you want, call Apple at such and such number to get this fixed right away. But when you call that number, obviously that's not Apple, right? That is scammers, and they know exactly how to get you, and they will put the pressure on you. And really, that's their modus operandi, is they're going to scare you and put pressure on you so that you can't think. And when people put pressure on you, literally you can't think. And that's how they do it. And they get hundreds of thousands of dollars out of people within half an hour of being on the phone. Maybe it takes them 45 minutes, whatever. I don't know. It's different for different people, obviously, but they are very, very good. So I think another thing that I would like to talk about here is, I want to skip around a little bit, is if you get, so let's say you have an iPhone, right? And I want to just talk about iPhone ecosystem or Apple ecosystem, right? Apple bills itself as the privacy company, but there's a huge flaw in the Apple ecosystem. So if you get into let's say you have Apple, you have an iPhone. If you have an iPhone, you're certainly using iPhotos, you're using iCloud, you're probably using Apple Pay, you're probably using Safari. And if you're using Safari, you're probably saving your passwords in the Apple's built-in password manager, which is Keychain. And all of that stuff, when you get so tightly wound into an ecosystem like that, that's a real big vulnerability for you. And so one of the things, for example, let me give you an example of this. Let's say you're out and about and you're on your iPhone and you type your code in to access your phone, right? That's all anyone needs to have total access to everything that you have. So if somebody sees you with your iPhone and they see you typing in your code to access that iPhone, then you are much more likely to get that iPhone stolen. So let's say you're out and about and you type in the code to access your phone, and maybe somebody's watching from over here. Maybe someone's got you on camera and they're looking that way. And then you're talking on the phone, somebody runs by, grabs your phone, jumps in the car and drives away, right? And you think, oh my God, they just stole my phone. No, they didn't. It is much more serious than that, because within 2 minutes, they will be able to change your Apple ID. They have access to everything, because Apple's entire security system is built on, they assume that you have control of your device and that you have the code to get into your phone. And if somebody has access to your iPhone and they have the code to access it, they have access to everything. So they can go in and change your Apple ID. They can turn off Find My Phone. They can lock you out of your account. And then they can change the email that's attached to it. And then they have access to everything, right? They have access to your iPhotos. They have access to your iCloud. They have access to any apps that you have on your phone. So let's say you have PayPal or Cash App or anything like that on your phone. Obviously, they have access to all of that. But the scarier thing is they also have access to Keychain. And Keychain is the one that you use your passwords on. And so let's say you don't even do passwords on your phone, but you have a Mac that's also connected to that iCloud account. That Mac saved those passwords on your Keychain account. So they have access to all of that stuff. So then let's say you have your bank account connected to, or in that keychain. They have that password. And then once you log into that, let's say your bank's going to send you a2-factor authentication, which is a text message, a 6-digit code for your text message. They have your phone, so they're going to get that. Or maybe your bank's going to send something by email. They've got your phone. They've got access to that. So within hours, they can, I mean, somebody that's really good at this can really just devastate you with that. So I think that's one of the most important things to realize, is just when you get tightly wound into an ecosystem, you're vulnerable. And so let's kind of unwind that a little bit. When you're out and about, don't type in a code, use biometrics. Use Face ID or a thumbprint, whatever your phone uses to gain access. Don't type in anything, or if you do, really, really hide it really well when you're typing that in. Don't put any apps on your phone that are connected to your bank account. So Cash App or PayPal or anything like that. Don't do anything sensitive on your phone. Don't use Apple Keychain, which is basically Safari. Safari's built-in password manager. Do not use Safari's built-in password manager. You've got to use a third-party password manager like Bitwarden to save your passwords. But you want to have your password manager on a computer, not your phone. I don't do anything sensitive on my phone. Let's see what else. Definitely turn on 2-factor authentication. First of all, you have to have a good complex password for your Apple account and have 2-factor authentication. But that 2-factor authentication, like I said, can be overridden by anyone that has access to the phone and can just enter the code in to access the phone. So anyway, I know I'm giving you a lot with this. And one of the challenges that we have with getting people private is it's overwhelming. There's a lot to know. And when I do webinars like this, I give a lot of information right now, and it can be overwhelming. And that's one of the things that I want to avoid, is I don't want to overwhelm you. but I know there is a lot to think about here. So anyway, Peter, do you want to jump in? Should I just keep going, or do you want to say anything, or what do you think?
Well, first of all, this is a learning experience for me, so I really appreciate you being here. I've been using Apple's products since 1984, so I'm a proud member of that ecosystem. And you just scared the blank out of me. So I do use biometrics, which is good. I use a separate password manager, which is something, but really appreciate all of those warnings. What do you think about password managers in general? You said you mentioned one, so apparently you do have some faith in them.
Yeah, I mean, password managers are really vital because you have to, security is so important, and you have to have a long, complex password for every site that's out there. It has to be unique, long, complex password. And if you can remember it, it's not long enough. It's not complex enough. So the only way to really do that is with a password manager. And I get some pushback from people that don't trust the password manager, but then they will use the built-in password manager in their browser. And I don't ever recommend that you use a built-in password manager in the browser. And it doesn't matter what browser. It doesn't matter if you're using Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Brave. Don't use the built-in password manager. Don't let the browser save passwords for you. You have to have a third-party password manager like Bitwarden. And Bitwarden is open source. It's highly encrypted. It's a very good password manager. But you want to do that right too. You want to have so basically what a password manager does is basically you have one password. You have a master password, and it should be long, complex, but it's the only one that you have to remember. And then the password manager remembers everything else, all the other passwords for every other site for you. And once you get in the habit of using a password manager, it actually makes your life a lot easier online. It's just a snap to go into the different sites. But again, I only do sensitive stuff on my computer. I don't do it on my phone. And I think that's an important thing to remember also. So, but then also, I guess another point on the password manager is you really need to do two-factor authentication too. So two-factor authentication means that passwords are not enough to get into the account. You also need, I have an app on my phone called Authy that is a authenticator app. And so I compartmentalize. I have my password manager on my computer, and I do not have my authenticator app on my computer. I have my authenticator app on my phone, but I don't have my password manager on my phone. So I keep them separate, and I call that compartmentalization. And I think that's an important thing. The other thing that's important also, though, is Authy, the app on my phone, allows me to put a password on it in addition to, so if somebody were to steal my phone and if somebody were to gain access to my phone, they still wouldn't be able to get into Authy because there's another code that I need to get into Authy. So, it takes some getting used to think like this. But I think it's very important. And that's really one of the main things that we teach is you need to learn how to think and how to think about, it's really being skeptical about everything. And you have to, you can't trust big tech. You'd think Apple, okay, I can trust Apple. Well, Apple wants to make it convenient for people. They want people to enjoy the experience, and they want to make it as safe as possible, as long as it doesn't interfere with that convenience for people. And that's basically how all of these companies think. So you have to be careful not trusting other companies or especially the government to take care of you. They're not going to take care of you. You've got to take care of yourself. So anyway, did that answer your question? I went on for a while there.
Oh, that's really good. In fact, I was thinking of interviewing my attorney friend who almost lost 73,000 last week about his experience, just to have a story. And he said, well, I'm not really interested in your questions. He's rather a blunt fellow. He said, I'd rather talk about how this is shifting my thinking and perception. And so you've resonated with that comment. One of the things, besides having a backup person to talk to, is also you can use, and I'd love your comments, Glenn, on this. You can use Google and you can use ChatGPT even to check into these things. You know, like I said, pause, take a beat, check it out. Oftentimes I'll put the scammer's phone number into Google or the name of the company or something. And oftentimes that'll turn up someone else's experience with them. And gosh, it's really spy versus spy. I imagine no, I'm not even going to say that because it's like, this is complicated enough. Yeah, I've had to use password managers for some time because if you use the same password everywhere, if anybody gets that, they've got everything.
Yeah.
So two-factor authentication, you've got to use complex passwords. That's going to change in a few years based on new kinds of computers coming out, that passwords are going to be more hackable. But for the time being, you've got to just have these complex passwords. You've got to have a bunch of them. And of course, you have to have them wherever you are going to be when you want to use them. You got to have that list with you somehow. So we could probably just do a whole session on password managers. That is a couple of things that I think are great. And maybe, you know, we're only getting through a fraction of the slides, which is fine. I like to take things as they come, but maybe get down to a point where we're talking about actions you can take and so on. But I will skim through the slides if that works. And then,
Sure.
So here's one tip. And by the way, you can contact me if you'd like a copy of the slides, but these will be on or in the video, that recording that we'll have up on YouTube. So strong passwords, two-factor authentication. Phishing is where somebody's trying to get you to get hooked so that you cooperate with them. And yeah, just a month ago, I was with a friend up in Marin County, and there's a woman he was communicating with on a dating app, and she said, oh, you know, I'll come out in a couple of weeks. Oh, it's gonna be another week. And and then all of a sudden, I need money to come see you. He said, oh, well, I was getting excited, but it's
That's the old-fashioned way of the pig butchering scams, but they've gotten more sophisticated now.
Every pig loves to eat, right? We find the people's hunger, and there you go. So there's even a password manager that I've seen that mixes up the numbers on the keypad, the virtual keypad, every time you log in. So somebody sees the pattern you're doing with your hand somehow. Yeah. It's just, yeah, you can't escape all of it. But be very careful with personal information. Just don't give it out unless you have to. Verify that there's a real reason. Keeping it private, using secure networks, avoid public Wi-Fi networks. Keeping your software up to date. These companies are updating their software almost weekly because of different threats that arise. Yep. And with computers, they can go out and hack a whole thousands of people at once and maybe have an AI avatar doing the communication with you. And it sounds like you're talking to a human. again, not to be paranoid, but definitely forewarned is forearmed. Beware of those new threats. Monitor accounts regularly. You may see something pop up on a bank or credit card statement. Heck, I had a hacker inside of one of the major banks who took over our accounts and had people coming in and getting cashier's checks. Pretty brazen, because they're on camera and everything.
Yep.
So we had to go in person to verify who we were and get our accounts back. So act quickly if you have a problem, if you know you have a problem. Change passwords anyway, just change them regularly, but definitely if you know that you've fallen into the dark web or something like that with your information, notify your institution that this has happened, contact relevant parties. Like if something comes through on Yahoo or something, or Facebook, the social media companies want to know about threats as well. And they sometimes can bail you out. Like my clients who got billed from their so-called roofing company, Charles Schwab had sent the money and they actually recovered about 3/4 of it. It wasn't too bad. If you have a financial advisor, definitely talk to your financial advisor. We know how to work with the different parties. And sadly, Glenn, I hate to say it, but sometimes when I need to help clients and I don't have all the information I need, I use those same techniques. I don't have a crying baby, but I'm pretty good at getting people to open up and help me.
Yep.
So I promise only to use that skill for good. Report the incident, inform the police or the Federal Trade Commission, and take it up to the government. That helps prevent others from becoming victims. We need to watch out for each other. I have a handout from Charles Schwab. It's really quite good. It's a 4-page handout that I'm happy to send you if you ask me for it. I also created a cheat sheet that you can keep next to your phone. So if somebody's trying to get under your skin there and you're not sure what to do, most of us are real nice people. We don't want to be rude to people. But if we have something to refer to, it can help keep us grounded through these emotionally awkward situations where you have to make decisions. Yeah, be really, really, really careful with confidential information sharing, and advisor can help you with that as well. Talk to your children about it. I'm dating a woman whose son wound up sending $160,000 of her savings to crooks over in Hong Kong. Needless to say, that money is gone. So talk to your kids and freeze their accounts in Experian and the other credit bureaus. Protect them because they can get to you that way too. Don't send anything through email that's confidential information, but if you do, make sure it's encrypted and files encrypted so we can, as advisors, help you with that. Don't jump into investment opportunities without thinking about it carefully. I've got a friend who put $10,000 into crypto and supposedly it's going to do this amazing thing and he's going to be okay financially. And I just don't have the heart to tell him, your money's gone.
Yep.
I know how this is going to turn out. And gold hasn't done anything for 100 years, basically. But it's always, oh, you need gold to protect yourself against Russian revolution and all these other things. And watch out for AI. And then again, we need to be watchful of scams that we wouldn't ordinarily think of. So we have this cheat sheet for your phone calls, and we have the Schwab PDF that I can send to you. You can also just do searches and contact these companies and say, how can you help me protect myself? And they have resources. Don't put confidential information in email. Don't attach files that are not encrypted to emails. Email is not that safe. If you're going to share files on a regular basis, learn how to use different tools. Glenn, I don't know what you think about Dropbox, but if somebody hacks one of these big services, then we're really screwed. But it's better than just sending it unprotected. Don't store
Well,
your
there's other
passwords.
there's more secure options like sync.com, sync.com,
Cool.
or Proton Drive is another one. Those are encrypted end to end, whereas Dropbox is not.
I think in the business version, Dropbox is, but I'm not the expert in this. But as I understood it, that's why we use that. But hey, we're going to keep learning, keep improving and upgrading our systems here. We're pretty computer savvy too. So additional resources, Federal Trade Commission, Internet Crime Complaint Center, Anti-Phishing Working Group, and cybersecurity firms. I'll get rid of Substack in your name. We have our contact information here if you want to ask, get on our list, get copies of these slides or the handouts I talked about. Think of 2 or 3 things that you can do in a couple of weeks. A friend of mine has invented something for himself he calls Money Monday. Every Monday he sits down and checks his credit card statements, or he I think rotates the different tasks that he undertakes. But he's just on a regular basis making this part of his financial hygiene, if you will. So we're going to have another webinar with Glenn that he has organized and put together and uses regularly. We're also going to have an upcoming webinar on artificial intelligence and how to use it intelligently, of all things, because it can be a tool for good and it can help with finances, and it can also just make life easier in some cases. Resist a sense of urgency. I don't know of anything that couldn't wait 24 hours, really.
Yep.
Glenn, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. If anyone pressures you on the phone, hang up. Because Apple, Microsoft, no one's going to pressure you on the phone. That is a huge sign that you're being scammed. And I liked what you said earlier, where you got to step back. And I'll tell you a little story real quick, if that's okay. So when my son was, I don't know, about 10 or 12, I brought him to a movie. I remember the specific time doing this. It was like some kind of Marvel superhero movie. And I told him before the movie, I said, in the middle of the movie, I'm going to tap you on your knee. And when I tap you on your knee, I want you to snap out of the movie. And I want you to look around and just see the world for what it is. And, see the world objectively. And then once you're there, once you've seen everything, okay, snap back into the movie. But that is a skill that I taught him that I think is very valuable, to be able to pop out of the moment and pop out of the emotions of the moment and just see things objectively. I think that's a huge life skill. That's not just for this type of thing, but it's for, propaganda or anything that happens. You've got to be able to pop out of it and see objectively.
I have a follow-on story about that. I attended a week-long, some people would call it a survival course, but the teacher or mentor there said it's not survival, it's really just primitive living. And he pointed out this awareness thing that we're not very good at in Western culture. And the way he taught it was very instructive. We had outdoor sessions a lot, but we also came inside in a room with about 100 people, and he'd show stuff on the whiteboard to save time. And on the 3rd day or something, we all came in, sat down, and he said, he said, on the first day when you came here, kind of looking around, which seat do I want to be in? Oh, the drinking fountain's over there. And the second day, you sat down in your seat and settled in and just looked at the whiteboard, which what we're taught to do, narrow our focus, narrow your focus. And, then you just became a creature of habit. And he said, to demonstrate that, all of you came in here, 100 people, and you didn't notice that there's a person on the beam right over your head. We would have been dead if that was an enemy. I mean, 100 people, we didn't notice a human being 4 feet over our heads. He said, and even though I told you that, you didn't see the second person over there. We have to realize we fall asleep, we get hypnotized, and we all fall prey to that. So awareness, very important, situational awareness, and the discipline to be rational in the midst of other people not being rational. So I think it's important to have something like a family safe word. So you get this frantic phone call from a relative needing to be bailed out of jail or come to the hospital or send money. You work it into the conversation where they have a password, in essence, to use verbally with you in talking to you. Easy to do, protects everybody, might take a lot of stress off of people if they realized their loved one wasn't actually in the hospital. Freeze your credit bureau accounts and freeze your kids' credit bureau accounts. It's easy to unlock them when you need to, but it prevents people setting up new accounts and using your credit information. Make backups of your old computer data. As I said, we had people break into our office and actually steal the computers. Luckily, no problem with that, but that's kind of a tricky thing if you want to do it securely. So we could talk about that maybe next time. And sometimes there's physical threats like fires or theft. So finding secure ways to store files electronically, I think, is one of the tasks that we need to master. And just have a rule. Another cheat sheet item for older people is, if you do decide to act on something, buy something, whatever, have a limit. And if it's over that limit, contact your trusted, advisor or friend or family member. So never spend more than $500 or $1,000. And yeah, that's kind of what I had. We can open it up to questions as you guys like, but thank you so much, Glenn. This is a great education for me, and I hope it is for everybody who's been on it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, goodness sakes. Do you guys have any questions or comments or
That's good.
anything at all? It could be personal, it could be broadly applicable.
Peter,
Yeah,
will
we
you be
didn't get-
sending? Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we didn't get to a lot of things. So if you have any questions about any of those things we didn't get to, we can get into that.
Peter, will you be sending us the slides?
I can do that. I didn't want to bombard everybody with them.
Well,
I was
I'll
thinking that
I'll
people
do a
would
personal
request
email
them.
then. And just ask
Okay.
for them. Okay.
But also, as I said, this is all being recorded, and I'm going to post the part where you guys aren't talking, so don't disclose anybody's information or names. But we'll post the educational content on the recording of the whole thing, including the slides, onto YouTube.
Great.
And share
That's
that
fine.
with you guys.
Okay, that's great.
I did want to say, Peter, if anyone's interested in joining the Privacy Action Plan, we do have. I did want to prepare a coupon for everybody, and the coupon code is Peter, and that would give you 60% off. And it's a lifetime membership. It's a one-time fee, and we do that because it takes the pressure off of people. We used to do month to month, but it just was too much pressure for people. to get things done right away. And so we just do a lifetime membership now.
And you drip the information out every couple of weeks or something like that, right?
Yeah, so what we do is we provide a clear path forward that will get you from where you are now to where you want to be without any of the noise and bombarding you with stuff. We want to just give you bite-sized pieces, you know, take this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then before you know it, you are really locked down with your privacy and security. So that's our goal, is to, you know, I learned early on that overwhelm is, it's not just about teaching people to be private. It's about teaching people to be private and secure in a way that doesn't overwhelm people. And one of the things that I warn people about is when you really start to learn about the threats that are there, people get excited and they want to go out and just soak up all the information that they can. And there is a lot of information on the web, but you'll just get overwhelmed. You'll just get so, like, there's so much stuff to know that you'll just get overwhelmed. And then you'll think, okay, well, maybe I'm not techy enough to know this, or I'm not smart enough to know this, but that's not what the issue is. The issue is you've just overwhelmed yourself. And so when people join the Privacy Action Plan, I'm just about to launch a new way to begin things. Actually, I'm gonna start it tomorrow. We're calling it the fundamentals, and we're telling people, you know, just go through the fundamentals. Don't look at anything else. Don't look at any YouTube channels. Don't do any other research, because you know, there's a lot of YouTube channels, there's a lot of other stuff, but their goal is to just keep pumping out information. And that's how they make money, is to just keep pumping out information. But that's not your goal. You have to avoid the noise, and you've got to stay focused and just do what you need to do. And just that's the clearest path to get to where you want to be. And so that's what we do.
Glenn, that parallels what we as financial advisors also have to do. People act on emotions rather than intellect. So we have to get them to think about behavior and not reacting. So many people were tempted to sell out of the market when we had this debt ceiling kerfuffle in Congress a couple of weeks ago, and we should never ever have that, but we do. People said, oh gosh, you know, if that happens, not going to be good. So friends of mine said, I was thinking about selling out of the market. No, don't try to time these things. Don't do it. Bad. And it turns out that financial literacy programs have no impact at all on people's lives. Knowledge doesn't do it. They have to be engaged. They have to have a motivation, and they have to practice, because it's a skill. It's not just knowledge. And a good example of overwhelm that I thought of, speaking of behavioral, is there's a study that's been quoted in many, many places, originally done at a market here in Los Altos, which is kind of cool. They were in a supermarket and they set up a table in one of the aisles with 3 different kinds of jam and the tasting opportunity. So people would stop by and they would taste 1 or 2, and then they'd buy a jar or 2 or 3 of jam. And then they put out 13 jars of jam, and nobody bought any jam, because the decision became more difficult when they had more choices. And that's just an eye-opening study. It was dramatic, the impact that too many choices had on people. So it's good. We've got to understand ourselves as human beings, because we're not just up against technology, we're up against psychology here.
Yep.
So just to put an exclamation point on your point. Anybody else have a question? You have to unmute yourself to talk to us. Or maybe I could, I don't know if I could unmute everybody at once. Doesn't look like that's easy to do. No? Okay. Well, you can certainly write to us after this if you have personal questions. Oh, I did think of one other thing. Glenn, is there any kind of a survey or personal privacy review that any company or software does that kind of tries to poke holes in your personal financial matters and warn you about areas that are weak?
You mean like if you give somebody a survey that asks them questions about different areas that they're weak? No,
No,
it's like, is that what you're asking? I don't really understand.
Right. I couldn't think of a better word than survey, but what I mean is some kind of a program that goes and tests your security in multiple dimensions and gives you kind of a report. Not something that you answer, because we're assuming that the person is an expert for them to be able to answer their own questions, but some way of testing the defenses automatically.
I don't think so. And I would say that the vast majority of people are basically starting from ground zero. I mean, even if they've taken a few steps, I mean, it's really kind of starting from zero. And so I would recommend that people just, start from the beginning and just move forward in a planned way. And if, let's say, you've got a password manager, okay, well, that's great. Is it set up properly? Do you have two-factor authentication on it? Did you save the recovery codes on it? So there's steps that everyone should take, regardless of, unless they're like an IT guy and they really know what they're doing on computer. I'd say vast majority of people are just starting from ground zero.
All right. Well, that's given me yet another idea for my squirrel brain to talk to you about later. Somebody else done something parallel in another realm entirely, but it's really cool. I'm see if I can contribute to your efforts too. But thank you again. 9:15 in Budapest. I hope we haven't kept you up too late.
No.
Thank you to your family for sharing your time, and look forward to our next conversation. Extremely useful.
Good. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you.
See you later, everybody.
Bye.